Hello and welcome to Angular Air. Today is going to be a super exciting episode. We are talking about React Native and Angular 2, two huge worlds colliding. And for this, we have on an all-star panel, including Ari Lerner.
Hello from sunny Santa Barbara.
And a special guest today, Michael Cox.
Hello.
Michael works with me at GetHuman, has a lot of React Native experience, so I brought him in to provide some extra commentary. And our special guest, featured guest for today is Marc Laval. Marc, you want to say hi?
Hello.
Now, Marc has been working on a prototype of combining React Native and Angular 2, which is why we brought him on the show. So, Marc, why don't you start off giving us a little bit about your background and how you got started in this project?
Yes, so I'm Marc Laval I'm calling from France. So I hope you'll get used to my accent. Anyway, with Olivier on the show. Hello, sorry. So I guess with Olivier on the show, it shouldn't be too much of a trouble for you. So here in France, I work for a big IT company called Amadeus. So it's say big because we've got like around 11,000 employees in the world. And basically we're creating IT for the travel industry. So we've got different solutions from initial search to making a booking to pricing, ticketing, managing reservations, managing check-in, departure process. So we do a big system for travel agencies, corporations, airlines, ground handlers, airports, car rental, whatever actors in the travel industry. And as such, we do. So we have many UIs being developed for many different products on the web, B2C, B2B, mobile. So many things, and so as a big company, so my role here is to be member of one of what we call a framework team or core team for UI. So where we've been developing in the past our own solutions to create own frameworks to create UIs, and more recently, like in the past years, we're now kind of recommending Angular and. So we provide internally trainings, recommendations, starter kits so that developers can really get started with Angular and create awesome web applications. And for more than a year, we've been also working directly with the Angular team. So thanks to one colleague of mine that you probably know, Pavel Kozlowski, who's good. Yes, he's well known in the Angular community, so he's working with me, like sitting next to me. So not right now, he's back, already back home, but thanks to him, we started a kind of partnership with the Angular team, and so we've been working on Angular 2 for more than a year now. So that's it about me. Then about this project on React Native, so it's like trying to tie together Angular 2 and React Native. It's true that in Amadeus we've built already many applications, and well, we've been always hesitating between hybrid applications and pure native applications. So, in some cases, hybrid was good enough. In some cases. Some people tend to say that native is needed, really. So when I say hybrid, I'm really thinking like the Ionic approach with Cordova, be it with Ionic or any user framework. So
wait, sorry, Marc. So I understand you're saying that you guys were using hybrid before, or that you've always been doing native?
We've been using both. Basically, we've got many different products. So in some cases, hybrid was fine. In some cases, some applications have been written in hybrid and sometimes written again in native because there was a need to be more, maybe for more animations or maybe more performance. So we've been kind of exploring and doing both approaches in the company. And it's true that with React Native on NativeScript, this kind of new in-the-middle approach where you can still use JavaScript and web skills, let's say, JavaScript skills, but still get performances and get real pure native application is quite seducing. So it was also interesting for us to explore this as a member of the core team. Then personally, I've always been interested in this topic. It used to be a long time ago, like a long time, like not so long, but I used to be a Java developer, like a J2E backend developer, and did also some Android native development, like 5-6 years ago. Then followed this trend into hybrid application, did a lot of experiments and prototyping and even recommended doing hybrid applications, which led me to be part of this core team now where we do pure JavaScript framework things, so either our own solutions or more something around Angular. And so all this together led me to try this React Native thing.
So do you guys use React Native with React as well, or was it just before you started your experiment that it was mostly just Angular?
So today, really, we don't have any project using React Native. Real implementation. It's more really like at the exploration phase. So we don't have any internal project using React Native or with React or with Angular 2. So today it's more like proof of concept exploration phase. Then if everything goes well, I will hope to be able to convince some projects and teams to use it and to try to build application with that.
So it sounds like the motivation, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're saying that you guys had been using Angular for a while, but that you have different needs and you have done native like Android before, or native probably iOS as well?
Yeah, in different projects, yes.
Yeah, so React Native came out and you wanted to see as an experiment, it sounds like, whether you could get it to work, basically.
Yeah,
okay,
basically.
Great.
And so React Native is really seducing, and so we're quite committed in Angular 2, and so it's true that if it's possible to make it work together with Angular 2 would be super nice. So there was last summer there was an internship by Scott Little, I think, in the Angular team, who kind of did a first proof of concept of Angular 2 plus React Native, which was working, but was really basic, let's say. And so myself, end of last year, was kind of playing with the renderer side of Angular 2, trying to imagine what could be done with this, because it's very interesting architecture, so we can really render to anything. Was doing something like you can even render to a text if you want to do a markdown renderer, for example. You write some templates in some syntax and then you output some markdown. So this is possible with Angular 2, so you can really render to anything. And we are thinking we could render to Canvas or WebGL. So we could have crazy ideas around that. But at the same time, so React Native became also, I think, React Native for Android was released at the end of next year. I don't remember exactly when, and which was also a way for me to start exploring it. And at that time, I was using a Windows machine, so it was also because couldn't use React Native with iOS for sure, but with Android it was working. So there was an opening basically to do this, to start exploring this approach, and so back in December I did the first proof of concept to just do MVC with React Native and Angular 2, and so it was kind of hacky, hard coding, a lot of hard coding things, but kind of it was showing that it was anyway possible to do it, and so since the beginning of the year I've been kind of pushing that forward to try to make it more, something usable, a real library.
Okay, I mean, I want to circle back to some of the motivations like you're talking about and actually comparing to some other options, but let's dive into a little bit of how it actually works. So can you give us kind of a rundown of what actually is happening? Because I think, I mean, we were talking before the show that chances are people that are listening probably either have React Native experience or have Angular experience, but probably not both. So maybe if you want to give us kind of a rundown of like what are you actually doing when you develop this, and like how does it actually run in real time?
Okay, so the first thing maybe so Angular 2, I guess you know it. But so React Native is quite interesting because so last week you had Ionic in the show. The week before you had NativeScript people. So React Native is quite close to NativeScript in the let's say philosophy or the architecture, which means that with React Native there is no web view, there is no Cordova. It's really native application. So and you've got the application running in JavaScript inside the JavaScript VM or thread. And React Native comes with a bridge basically between this JavaScript world and the native world. And so basically the two worlds can communicate back and forth. And so React Native comes with a kind of some APIs which are available in JavaScript, which allows you to create elements, native elements like button, label, switch, whatever. And so this, and these low-level APIs are exposed to in the JavaScript world. It doesn't mean you have to use React or Angular 2 or whatever to use those APIs. You can just start a React Native project, use those very low-level API, and do your own and create your own application. So you can, thanks to those APIs, you can create elements, move elements in the tree, you can update them, update their properties, you can listen to events on those elements, and so you basically have all those this very low-level API which is available. So this is about manipulating elements, the native elements, and then for sure React Native also exposes some more APIs where from JavaScript you can access like native features, networking, geolocation, accessing the clipboard, many things. If you know Cordova, those kind of APIs are a bit like the Cordova plugins that you will find in Cordova that you will use to get access from JavaScript to the native features. So this is on one side. So this, so React Native comes with all the APIs so to manipulate elements and to access native features. And then on the other side, you've got Angular 2 with this architecture where you've got the renderer and the core of the applications, which are completely, well, which can be completely separated. So the core part of Angular 2 is going to run all the applications. So this includes chain detection, dependency injection, all the directives, the components, all the logic is going to live in this in the core, let's say, process. And this core thing is completely unaware of the rendering part. It just manipulates, just runs the logic. It knows that at some point it has to create elements or to update some UI elements, but is completely separated from the rendering part. It's so separated that you can run the core application inside a web worker or a service worker and different thread, and we communicate with the renderer, which is completely separated. And so basically, so to link Angular 2 and React Native, so they need to have a special renderer, which is going to take those instructions coming from the application. And the renderer is kind of dumb. It just gets an instruction to create an element or to update an element or to perform these kind of actions on the rendering part. And by default, for example, with Angular 2, you've got a DOM renderer, which is going to create and manipulate the nodes, the DOM elements. And so by creating a special renderer for React Native, we can, because on one side we've got Angular 2 and the core part, which is going to send those instructions. On the other side, you've got the React Native APIs, where you can do those things. And so in the middle, yeah, the missing piece is a special renderer that is going to take all those instructions and then call through this JavaScript API the React Native and create elements.
So then, if you created your own renderer, that means that more than likely you have your own Bootstrap process as well, right, for React Native in Angular 2 apps.
Yeah, so kind of you have to, through DI, you have to tell the Angular application to just bootstrap with a special renderer and a few other things. But yeah, basically you need to have your own Bootstrap, yes.
So, do you use the normal Angular Bootstrap method and just pass
basically,
in different?
Behind the scene, well, the special Bootstrap is just kind of encapsulate the normal Bootstrap from Angular 2, but just setting up a special renderer and a few special things which are kind of overridden, or like not the default ones from Angular 2, but yeah, it's just
okay. So just to recap where we are so far, just so I kind of understand. So if I was to take, and this is just like the way my brain works, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, is like, let's say I'm working on an Angular 2 web application. So like it's a normal Angular 2 web application.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like the difference, like if I'm taking that and I'm making it a React Native Angular 2 application, what I'm doing is, number one, on the Bootstrap side, like you said, I'm adding those extra, the renderers that I'm passing into for DI so that it uses those, right? And then in the actual components, it sounds like for the view layer, you're using, instead of like HTML, you're using like the React Native view elements, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have available the libraries, the React Native libraries, if you want to access the camera or anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Is there anything I'm missing there?
No. Basically, it's that's the idea behind this renderer. Yes. So after that, one thing is that let's say this low-level API to create elements is not very user-friendly. So as part of the renderer, what I'm also doing is creating a set of Angular 2 components, like normal components in Angular 2, which are kind of wrapping things and making them easier for users. So each component has a clear set of inputs, a clear set of outputs, and which can be documented. And so it's easier for developers to just use those components, and which means inside your template you're going to use all those components, so they are special. They are not HTML things. So for sure you're not using div, or so you will be using a view instead, and etc.
So outside the view layer, it sounds like you should be able to reuse most of your code with other Angular 2 applications, even if it's just like an Angular 2 normal web application, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Basically, because as a developer, then you're going to write your own components and just reusing what's available. So basically, I would say that in many cases, it would be just, as a user, you would just write the same component with a different template, which is doing different, with different elements inside. But for sure, all the services and everything else can be completely shared between two applications. So yeah, it would be exactly the same as if you're writing a single application and you want to target mobile web and desktop web. So maybe you would write different, for the same component, you will have different templates. Or maybe in some cases you want to have different flow or different routes, these kind of things. But so basically Android with React Native would be another target, and iOS with React Native would be yet another target.
So are you able to use all of the React Native tooling? Because I know of you again, I don't do it as much, and maybe Michael or R, you can mention any of the stuff that you're aware of, but I know that the tooling side is what a lot of people like a lot of the development environment in React Native when you're using on the React side. Are you able to use all that same stuff for React Native Angular 2, or is there some things that don't work?
Well, so with the approach I have today, so basically yes, because with the approach I have today is that so an application is basically, or project is basically a React Native project. That's the same kind of project that we'll create with the React Native CLI when you do React Native init, or I don't remember exactly, maybe something like this. So, so one thing to know is that React Native, so you usually write your code in CommonJS or ES6. And React Native comes with a packager which is going to take all this JavaScript code and package everything together in a single huge file, and then run it as part of the application inside this JavaScript VM. And so with the approach I've taken for Angular 2 with React Native is that so just this code, you just write your usual code, so maybe in TypeScript, and then you transform it into CommonJS and put it and give it as an input for the React Native project, basically. And so, which means that the packager is going to take this code, is going to take Angular 2 and all the dependencies of Angular 2 and do this big package and run it as the application. So which means that at the end of the day, it's still a React Native project in which you just put some Angular 2 code. And so which means that all the tools, the packaging, the bundling, all the dev tools, so even the development mode in which you can just do some live reload of the application, you can debug in Chrome. So all these things, you can do them because at the end of the day, it's just a special JavaScript application which is running Angular 2, but it's still a React Native project. So
yeah, I never really thought about it like that, but it's almost like you're saying that a React Native project is React by convention, really, but nothing else, because there's JavaScript that's sitting on top of the rendering engine, and the rendering engine is really the glue that's keeping it all together, is really the innovative part. And the fact that most people out there are writing React on top of it is just, we're doing it because that's what Facebook tells us to do, not because there's any a large technical boundary there. We really just built the component, the way to bridge the gap to iOS and nothing else.
So basically, yeah, if you look at in React Native, so React Native comes also with a set of React components that people are supposed to use when writing their JSX and their application. So basically with Angular 2, it's a bit the same. You can build the same kind of components, but for Angular 2. And these components are going to render correctly using the renderer and the low-level APIs. So, but yes, so at the end of the day, yeah, it's a React Native project with all the tooling and advantages of React Native, but inside it, the JavaScript part that you run is an Angular 2 application, which is fully packaged altogether.
Yeah, just kind of jumping on what Michael had said, I guess I wasn't thinking about this before either, but I guess this is how I saw, I didn't really dive into the details of it, but I saw on Twitter people were working on like Elm with React Native and Cycle.js with React Native and some other stuff, and probably taking like kind of a similar approach that you did, kind of just building on top of those core React Native APIs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you want to just do vanilla JavaScript with React Native, you can. If you in your JavaScript, if you know the APIs, the low-level APIs, you can just write yourself the things. So then, if you run a framework which is using those things, those APIs to do the rendering, yeah. So I guess anyone can use them.
So I'm curious then, because I totally get why you would want to use, you know, a native, something that's working correctly, directly with native, because you guys have some hybrid apps. Maybe you want some more performance and that type of thing. That whole native versus hybrid debate, which we could maybe talk about that in a minute. But the thing I'm more curious about for initially here is, so native script is out as well, right? And native script is very similar to React Native, arguably more kind of weight behind the momentum of integration between the two. So, and I know what you're saying, that it's because it's just an API that you could do anything on top of React Native. But like when you look at examples, when you look at the community, most of the people are just doing React on top of React Native. So I guess looking at it now, how would you compare what you're doing with a native script and Angular 2, and why do you think that somebody would choose one over the other?
That's a good question. To be honest, I really haven't studied, didn't even have a look really at native scripts. I can't really say if one of them is much better than the other, but the approach is very similar. So one thing is that, so I think native script is kind of exposing most of the native world through, they were saying in the show 2 weeks ago, they have this reflection system which allows from JavaScript to access anything from native. So that's something that React Native doesn't do. I don't know why, to be honest, but that's one difference. So I don't really know the APIs from native scripts, so I can tell about them. But in React Native, what is being done is that the APIs which are exposed are kind of similar to what you get in JavaScript. So, for example, you don't have to use a special API to use XHR. You just have the XHR object as you would do in your browser, or you can use window.fetch, for example, directly in React Native, so you don't have to think about it. You've got request animation frame, for example, if you want to run animations. And so these things they're kind of providing shims for all these features, which have exactly the same API as the web, but which are behind the scene are using native. So when you do XHR, it's actually going to native and sending a request from the native side. So after that, so maybe the philosophy of the approach is a bit different in the way they expose the native world, but so then, it's hard for me to say more about this.
So, I have a question about. I always think it's interesting when looking at the authors of frameworks and authors behind projects about what issues you can see might come up with your approach. I know that you have only a small data set of people who have actually used this, which is just you right now, or are you in a small list of other developers, right? A short list. I was just curious, what issues can you see coming up, or have you encountered that would prevent somebody from wanting to port the view layer of their application over to use Angular 2 and in using JavaScript core or React Native and Angular 2?
Well, so far I don't see really big blocking points when it comes to building applications with Angular 2 and React Native. For sure, there could be some, if you want to build very complex applications, the fact that you got this JavaScript thread, which is just one unique JavaScript thread, could be a kind of bottleneck in terms of performance. So maybe you cannot build any application with React Native, but I think most applications are can be built. So
so it seems
so
like
that
yeah. So another question that kind of comes up when talking about that is, it seems like this is a layer of abstraction on top of a layer of abstraction on top of a layer of abstraction. Like, would that, I don't know, 3 rungs away, it kind of scares me. Does it, could you get away from actually even needing to know React Native to write an Angular 2 app on React Native in the project?
well, you don't really have to know React Native. What you need to know, basically, as a user, you will need to know the set of components, Angular 2 components that you can use in your application with clear APIs and clear inputs and outputs. And for sure, you will need to know, let's say, these APIs which are exposed by React Native to access the native features like the camera, geolocation, these kind of things. So they are documented, they exist. That's basically all you need to know as a developer. And because here the goal also is really to be able to write and to use all the features of Angular 2. So for example, I was mentioning etc. But basically, since as part of the project, as a renderer, also my goal is also to let people use the Angular 2 HTTP module, so you don't have to learn something new. You just use Angular 2 HTTP. If you want to use a router, you can use a router too. You can, because even if there is no, you can just mock. So for sure, it's not a browser with a location that you can navigate, but you can mock that quite easily. And so, so as a user, basically, the goal is, well, the goal for me is more like to bring to users an environment where they can use all of Angular 2 without really asking questions, with a set of components which are for sure special because it's native world. For sure, then it's tied to React Native in the way those components are, the styling you can apply on them. So this comes from React Native. It doesn't have to be implemented again. And for sure, there are those extra APIs to access native features that you need to use. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's quite. Don't have to. Once you know Angular 2, I think it doesn't require too much to learn on top of that to build those applications.
Sort of along the lines of what Ari is asking, with being an abstraction on top of abstraction. We have a Twitter question, which, by the way, if anyone listening does want to ask a question on Twitter, just tweet with the hashtag NGAIR, NGAIR. So Aaron Dayton tweeted, does the use of Angular 2 in React Native have an impact on performance compared to pure React Native?
That should be measured, I guess. I haven't done that. So I don't think it's as big. It should be the same difference as when you do web and you run the same application, you write the same application in React or in Angular 2. So there's no like, I don't know which one is faster. I guess there's no, there isn't a one unique answer to that. It depends really on the scenario and on the application. But I don't think there's like a special extra cost for running that for you to use Angular 2.
Yeah, you probably have to take detailed performance metrics if you haven't already to see like something like that, which I would guess wouldn't be that big of a difference like you're saying. But it would be interesting to see, just based off of the typical ways that Angular versus React handles like changes in the DOM, like whereas Angular uses change detection and a lot of the stuff that's built into Angular 2 versus React's approach with the virtual DOM and everything like that. I mean, that's the whole debate between React and Angular on the web, right? I don't think that debate is settled per se, but probably on mobile there are certain use cases where one shines versus the other. So I would imagine it's the type of thing that you have to kind of try it out for your particular use case and see what fits in.
I think this is something that would be definitely interesting to measure. At the same time, it has to be, so everything is quite young. So React Native is quite young, Angular 2 is young, Render also. But so I think there is also room for improvement, for optimizations in all layers. So,
I'm wondering too, if you thought while you were running the renderer, if you thought it might have been particularly difficult to write it coming from Angular 2, calling something that they intended to be called from React. In other words, if you have to write that bridge, was it normally hard because you had to think of it from an Angular 2 world but call something that was built from React?
Well, no, because the low-level API is not really built for React, or I don't know, maybe it is, but the low-level API is just about creating elements, updating elements, moving elements in the tree, deleting elements. So it's really low level. So it's really not a big effort to use that with Angular 2. So because the renderer is kind of, you can for sure it's a bit. There is a bit of optimization in the renderer just to avoid like going from JavaScript to native so many times because. But no, it's not. There's no extra work or complex logic to use those APIs. They are quite. They are low level enough so that it's a bit the same as you would use. In the document, create elements in the document on the document, or yeah, no, it's not complex. It's not complex logic here.
Yeah, I was listening to Andre Staltz on the React Native Radio podcast talking about Cycle with React Native, and one thing he mentioned, which I think actually fits into the stuff that you're talking about, is that he thinks Cycle, which is like a reactive framework built on top of observables and RxJS. That fits in really well with React Native because of the way that the event loop between JavaScript and the native is like set up within React Native, and you could apply that same type of thinking to Angular if you are using kind of the reactive style with observables in Angular 2, which actually brings up my next question, like what patterns are you using on the Angular 2 side for the apps you're building that seem to fit in well with using React Native?
Well, so I'm not really building apps now, but no, I think really I don't see a special. Well, at the end, yeah, you will. At the end of the day, you will just writing a standard Angular 2 application. The only thing is that there will be a special renderer and special syntax, special elements in your templates. So then if you want to use whatever approach for your data management, I don't see anything special related to the fact that you're connecting to React Native. You still, yeah, basically. Yeah, I don't see. Well, maybe there will be some things will come up later, but today I don't see really something which is really making a big difference in this aspect.
So that's a really good segue to the question that I'm particularly excited about, which is what advice, like if somebody today wanted to start writing with your project or start contributing, how would they, and what status is it at? Like when do you foresee yourself writing apps with it?
Okay, so today it's still let's say under development. So one big reason behind it is that I was just able to start working on the iOS side quite recently. But so I think that in a few. So first today you can just go on the repo, clone it. There is a sample application that you can start and you can play with it. There's no problem with that. It works just fine on Android. Well, and it's quite complete on Android. On iOS, it's more like for now it's more like a Hello World thing, but it should be moving forward quite quickly. And then the goal is really to have a kind of first release, alpha release in a few weeks or in a month, with all the components available for Android, for iOS, have all this fully working, documented, and published in NPM so that people can just start using it. And for sure, I will be super happy to see people contributing or getting feedback from users building actual applications. But I think, yeah, should get something quite stable, well, at least enough to be used, and then there will be some more room for improvements. Some optimizations, looking at performances. So in Angular 2, there will be pretty soon a big animation framework which is going to be done by Matthias. And so also it will be interesting to see how we can translate this animation framework feature of Angular 2 into native animations with a good level of performance. Yeah.
That's super cool.
We're getting near the top of the hour, so we have one Twitter question, and then actually have one last question before our picks. So from Twitter, Aaron, again with the question. So if I'm not wrong, you can use React Native components, core components, third-party components from React Native components, sorry, in your component template. So basically, is it easy to pull in any of the various third-party React Native components into your template, or is there a different process that you use for that?
This is something I have to explore for sure. Because the thing is that if you take a third-party component, so for sure there will be some native code. There will be a need to kind of register it into React Native. If you do React, there will be a React component that you will be using inside your application, and which is going to use this, go through this bridge and use the native code. So for sure, when using Angular tools, there will be, I guess, a need to have an Angular 2 component, which will be equivalent to the React component, and which is going to use itself the low-level API. So, because basically a third-party component would be one more low-level API to access, I don't know, for example, map view on Android, which is not part of React Native today. So if you want to access it, you will need to. So this is something also to be explored when used with Angular 2.
Maybe something that you could build like a CLI plugin for with the Angular CLI.
Yeah, after that, ultimately it would be great to be able to build, to write some kind of plugin for the Angular CLI so that you can start a project, import components, import third-party things, build, bundle, do whatever you need. Yeah, that's one thing too.
Okay, got it. Yeah, but you could do it today, but you're just saying you have to do some manual steps basically to set it up correctly.
But this is something I still need to really explore, like what it means to import third-party components, and to after that, if there could be also kind of Angular version, not an Angular version of a third-party component, but at least an Angular 2 interface to this. So hopes that authors of those third-party components will be coming up with, let's say, Angular 2 interface or directives, in that case components really for their own library. So
gotcha.
A lot of these components that you pull, they're not just a native code piece, but they have a front door, so to speak, that has that's assumed to be React. So if you look at their file as you download from NPM, it assumes React, and it has a little bit of JavaScript on top of it. So it'd be unfortunate. It's like you have to fork it just for that.
We have to see how, we have to see what can be done to have this Angular 2 front door also available for Angular 2 applications.
Well, one thing I would suggest, by the way, is it seems like the React Native Radio guys are pretty open to having people who are doing like different things, like you are. Maybe if you get on there and sort of get on the soapbox to try to get plugin developers to support Angular 2, then you could start that wave of innovation.
Yeah, it would be nice to have this kind of community move to like expand React Native to have more users and more components available, be it with React or Angular 2.
Well, actually, but in all seriousness, probably it does sound like there's more than just Angular 2, like we were talking about, a couple different frameworks that are trying to build on top of React Native. So it would make sense to try to encourage plugin developers to not tie it down to one thing, like Michael's saying, like it has to be React Redux or whatever. But yeah, maybe there might not be too much you could do about it. But it would be interesting to see at least. Okay. So I do have one last question, and this may seem like a silly question, but it sort of gives me a view into kind of like, I guess, your own like confidence in what you're working on and that type of thing. So if you had to like look into a crystal ball, okay, 3 years from now, where Angular 2 is ruling the universe, right? And if we could assume that there's probably more than likely 1 million new frameworks that come on the scene to them, but let's say, for the sake of argument, that it's just like 3 main players right now that are kind of, with Ionic and NativeScript and React Native. What percentage of Angular 2 developers that are building for mobile do you think are going to be using kind of the React Native approach?
Whoa. So I don't know. Don't really have a crystal ball here with me, but
the right answer is like 90% or something.
Yeah, 95 or 99. I don't know. I think well, each solution will address different problems. Basically, I think hybrid is still great. Is great to do some applications. NativeScript or React Native will be great to do many applications, most of applications, I would say, because when I look today on my personal smartphone and the applications I'm using daily, I think most of them could be done with React Native. So that some of them will be maybe hard to do in terms of performance, or because they're very complex. They have very advanced animations or this kind of thing, so it might be more difficult, but I would say that most of the applications I'm using every day could be done with React Native, be it Angular 2 or React after that. So I think there's quite, and the fact that you can reuse a lot of code between, if you're going Angular 2, if you can reuse a lot of code between your iOS app, your Android app, your web. So the goal of React Native today, at least, is not to write one single code and have it run everywhere, and we know that each platform has its own specificities. So there's still a need to have those little differences. But if you can still reuse a good number of code, if you can reuse the same skills between the different platforms, I think that's a very interesting way. It's quite early today to say, in terms of performance, in terms of adoption, the third-party libraries, the coverage of React Native today. So since they're not using reflection, so you don't have everything from native available in JavaScript. So that's also something which is, but the coverage is increasing after each release. They release more components, they release more things. They try to improve performances. Yeah, I think
it's a good politician's answer for sure. But I'll put in show notes that you said 95%. That everybody is going to be using this.
So you're going to cut the other part of the discussion. Yeah. Okay.
No, but so if people do want to help and they do want to get involved, I already mentioned this a little bit earlier, but where can they go to?
So today there's a report. So today, yeah, there would be a need to move the repo in a more, let's say, official place. So today it's more like the Skitter repo. So you can still go there today, play with it, and give feedback on what you see. It's still quite early. I'm hoping to have something more usable in a few weeks, so that and published properly, so that we can really be used by developers, so that can provide feedback. After that, yeah, I think in terms of yeah, but when it comes to documentation, finding all the little things to improve here and there, making sure that everything works fine on different devices, different versions of iOS, versions of Android. We know there are many cases to be tested, validated, and I think what would be also super interesting is to get some feedback about the developer experience. So for sure, the tooling of React Native is great, but so we were discussing about what you would take for a developer who knows Angular 2 to do an application with React Native. So what needs to be learned, what needs to be understood. I think there also we can probably improve things that should be yes, really. If you know Angular 2, you just have to learn that you have to use a bunch of components. So you've got a bunch of APIs that you can use, and you use your usual router, your HTTP, your features, you project nodes, you do your ng-for, your ng-if. All these things are working, and you shouldn't be even asking yourself. It's just Angular 2, so you write Angular 2, and it's meant to be working.
Cool. Well, thanks, Marc, for coming on. Let's get to our picks. And actually, just a quick note that next week we are going to have Julie Ralph on to talk about testing with Angular 2. A lot of great updates with Protractor and Karma and other testing tools that she's been working on. So definitely tune in to that. But for picks, let's get started with Ari.
All right. Well, particularly appropriate with this episode of Angular Air. I am one of the core authors on ngBook and ngBook 2, and as of tomorrow, you guys are the first people to hear about this. As of tomorrow, we are pre-releasing our React book, and our React book has a full chapter on React Native, and possibly, depending where we're at when we set that, when we start completing that, possibly we might be able to include other renderers.
So maybe you'll have a chapter on React Native with Angular 2?
That's exactly what I'm saying, yeah. It's possible. It's possible. No promises, but definitely, this is definitely a very cool project. So anyway, it's not up yet. The book, if you are interested in grabbing the pre-release, it's at fullstackreact.com, and we'll put that link in the show notes.
Great. Thanks, Ari. Michael, why don't you give us your picks?
Sure. I got a couple of them. One is Realm, which is a database that's been around for a while. It's a SQL-type database, but I think pretty recently they started supporting React Native. So it's nice. I think a lot of times when you're building a React Native app or a mobile app, you're storing some basic stuff in local storage. And I've been checking this out because it looks pretty cool as a way to store a bit more data and then pull that data out using SQL. And they've written a nice API for it into React Native that seems to follow the right patterns there. So looks pretty cool. And then the other one was I saw a presentation a week or so ago on somebody who took those Amazon like the buttons that order Tide for you, and they figured out how to intercept it. So basically, you push the button, and you have a Node app that goes out, intercepts the transmission to Amazon. Excuse me. And you can kind of program it to do whatever you want. So they wrote a little NPM plugin for it, and you can program it to do whatever. And they wired it up so that a button that says Tide on it actually pushes their code to production. So pretty cool little proof of concept there for using what is a essentially free little thing from Amazon and turn it into something cool.
That is super cool.
Yeah, nice.
Those are my picks. So I got a couple links for you guys.
That's awesome. I have two quick picks. One is the Angular usage trends survey that I just sent out. So I did a survey last year, had a couple thousand people enter. That was great. We learned a lot of stuff about people that were starting to use Angular 2. This time around, I worked with the Angular core team to come up with a couple of really simple questions that will provide a lot of insight into the community, especially in terms of migrating to Angular 2. So if you have not already, definitely go to angular.io/survey, angular.io/survey. That has the, it's just 2 or 3 minutes to take, and it will help everybody out, and you'll learn a lot in the end. And then the second pick is Pascal Preck's talk from NGNL called Change Detection Explained. He does a really good job of just in a very simple way going into Angular 2 change detection. And I just thought that was a great talk. So thanks to Pascal for putting that together, and I'll have a link in the show notes for that. All right, Mark, what are your picks?
So one for me. So last week there was this very interesting article. So we are speaking about React Native. So article called React Native Scheduling by Andy Street from the React Native team, where basically explains what the threading model of React Native today. Where are the bottlenecks that they have identified, and what kind of strategies they want to put in place to solve that. The real goal is that they want high responsiveness with so visible responses under 100 milliseconds. They want smoothness with animations that should update consistently under every 16 milliseconds. And basically the capability with this new threading model to really provide developers a way to build any UI the same way they would do it in pure native code. And first, it was very interesting to read that and to understand a bit more in details how React Native is working, and also it's great to see that it will be even better. So we can just cheer them to do all these things that they want to do. I can send you the link, probably. It would be
great. No problem. Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Ari. Get Ari's book for sure, pre-order. And
yep. Tomorrow, not today.
Tomorrow, sorry. And we'll see everybody next week for our discussion with Julie Ralph on testing. See you later.
Okay, thank you, bye.